Booyah prank, 3-in-1. What's up, guys? I'm back again on the Monster Bass channel, Oklahoma's worst angler, and today we're going over the prank from Booyah. Now, this is not the ideal conditions for fishing today. We're dealing with about 15-mile-an-hour winds, 12 to 15-mile-an-hour winds. Not exactly ideal for the prank, but you don't always get ideal conditions when you're out fishing. So I'm going to show you guys how I like to fish it, and hopefully show you guys the best way to maximize your chances of catching on the Booyah prank. Let's get it. So I want to give you guys some tips on how to fish the Booyah prank. Windy days are tough, but you know what? We can't always escape the wind, and we want to go out and go fishing. So one thing that I like to do with the prank is working it as a popper. Kind of think of it like a jerkbait in a sense. What you're going to want to make sure that thing pops is you're going to want slack in your line. You're going to want slack because if your line is too tight, that lip is going to catch and it's going to dive down, because this is kind of a hybrid of a sort of a popper and a square bill. So when you're working that with a little more slack in your line, you're going to get that popping action that you're seeing right there. Got plenty of slack in my line, hard popping it kind of like a jerk bait, and getting that thing to pop and cause a lot of commotion and a lot of splash up top, calling those fish up. You can see that right there. Working that, a lot of slack in the line, getting a lot of pop, getting a lot of splash right there. Doing exactly what a popper should do. Now, the prank is, it's a pretty loud bait. It's got some sticky hooks on it too. Now, you can run this thing much like you would a square bill. You can crank it down and you can roll it just like you would a square bill. You can bounce it off the bottom, bounce it off structure. It is a very fast floating bait. It rises quickly, which is great if you are working a lot of structure. So if you feel yourself starting to bang the bottom, you know, or be smacking against, you know, any kind of brush or anything like that, all you got to do is stop your retrieve, let it float back up, comes up really quick, then crank it back down. Now, another technique that I like to use with the prank is a little crank down technique. Crank it down, let it float up, pop it on the surface, crank it back down, let it float up, pop it on the surface. Give that kind of dying bait fish, fleeing bait fish, mimicking action. Crank it down, let it float up, and then start popping it. The thing is loud enough, the feathered treble, it's got a great tight action in the water. Crank it back down, let it float back up, and start popping it again. Okay. Now another tip. I know I gave this tip when I did the topwater poppers and spooks video for you guys, but on the prank, now again, this is my topwater rod. I'm usually running braid, but on the prank, I would definitely recommend throwing this on mono. 10 to 12 pound is going to do you just fine for the prank. But when you're working with braid and poppers and those treble hooks, that braid, if you get too much slack in the line, you're going to get wrapped up around that treble there, and it's going to foul up the action of that bait. So if you're running mono, which is going to float and have a little more stretch to it, it's going to be a little stiffer, and you're not going to run into those issues near as much. So if you got the prank in your box this month, mono. 10 to 12 pound, 15 max. I wouldn't go any heavier than that, but 10 to 12 pound mono on the prank is going to do you perfectly. Right now I'm trying to work this shallow water, see if anything's coming up as the sun is going down, see if anything wants to feed up shallow tonight. The prank is definitely one of those harder baits. No, we've had a lot of guys reach out and ask, What do you do with this thing? How do you work it? That's what I'm trying to answer for you guys today, is how to work the prank and the best techniques to use to catch fish on the prank. Now, me personally, I'm more of a topwater guy. I love working it like a popper. But if you are a square bill guy, if you're a crankbait fisherman and you're more comfortable with that, crank this thing down. Crank it down. Use it to bang against the bottom. Use it to bang off a structure. Bang off some, riprap. If you're fishing grass, bury that thing down in there. As soon as it starts catching, let it float back up. When it's coming right back up, that is when you're going to get those reaction strikes and get those fish to really hit and crush this bait. Don't be afraid to get out there and work that thing aggressively too. Make that thing just explode on the top of the water. Do not be afraid to do that, especially on these windy days. Call them up, cause a whole lot of commotion. Let it sit there for a second and pop it again. Just be ripping that thing. Don't be afraid, if you get the prank, to go out there and work it however you want. Go out there and vary up your cadences with it. Do a crank down technique. Work it like a square bill. Crank down, pause, let it rise, crank it back down, pause, let it rise. Mix up your cadence. That's the beauty of the prank, is the fact that you can work this as two different lures, okay? Biggest tip though, remember, throw this thing on mono, okay? Mono is gonna do you the best. I'm just a braid guy for all my top water. If you are a braid guy as well and you like to have braid spooled up all the time, tie a short mono leader. Just get a shallow spool of some monofilament. If you've been fishing for a while, we all have some old monofilament laying around. Tie a little leader knot on there and work this thing. Get out there, fish it, work it aggressively, work it finesse style, okay? Small little pops, let it sit for a while. Do whatever you gotta do, but take this prank and go out there and catch a monster freaking bass, okay? Now, another thing that you can do with the prank, keep that rod tip up, slow rolling it, and you can get yourself a nice little waking bait. Look at that. Nice little wake action right there. Get that rod tip up and then kind of follow it back if you're beating the banks like this. What you want to do is high stick it, let it float up, high stick it, and then slowly start to reel it back. And you're going to get a killer wake bait action out of this thing. Look at that thing coming right there. Look at that. Woo, buddy. Booyah prank, 3-in-1. High stick. It helps if you have your fingers out like this too. Nice little finesse reel right here. Keep your fingers out. One finger, one thumb. That's all you need. One finger, one thumb. Get that thing waking. Working as a wake bait. Hey, well, he ain't the biggest. He's not exactly a monster bass, but that's all I was talking about, guys, is the Booyah prank. You can run that as a little wake bait, and that is exactly how we got this little guy right here, running as a wake bait. Let's go ahead and send them on back. Say goodbye to the Monster Bass channel. Let's look at this guy just in the water. Watch this thing just come screaming in here. Wait for it. Look at this thing just screaming. Look at that. Killer little action. Killer action on that bait. That feathered treble. Guys, I hope this video helped you out. If you've got any questions about the prank, if you wanted to know how to fish it, what's going to work best, get out there, throw the Booyah prank, catch a monster bass. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate every single one of you. If you haven't already, give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the Monster Bass channel down there. My channel is linked down below as well. Drop me a sub. I would appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time we're on the water.